The Knights of Hanoi have one mission and one mission only: eradicating the ignis threat to ensure the continued survival of mankind, no matter what method they have to use to accomplish this. And none are so devoted to the cause than a mysterious masked individual. Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. I've made a habit of holding on to particular archetypes until we hit certain subscriber thresholds, and we just hit 65,000 subscribers. Once again, huge thank you to everyone who's pitched in so far. Your faith in me gives me wings. And now, it's time for one of the most skilled and powerful rival characters to bless the series to make their GoldenNova Explained series debut. A power that they wield that couldn't be contained to only the anime, as these cards have had a long, lasting impact on dragon lovers everywhere. Premiering in the October 2017 core set Circuit Break, Rockets and their accompanying archetype Borrels are the signature archetype of Rokket Kogami, who goes under the alias of Varis or Revolver depending on the source material. This ruthless duelist would pivot from antagonist to reluctant ally as some of the Ignis go rogue and actually do become a threat to humanity. You gotta love it when the bad guys get some vindication, huh? And as the threats grew, so too did his power, giving duelists a taste of their explosive might, and now it's time to introduce you to his arsenal. So get ready to send your opponent off with a bang. It's time for Revolver Explained. Today's episode is brought to you by my lovely patrons, as well as the wonderful people over at Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and save 5% on your order by using coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. So what's the deal with rockets? Well, they're a series of dark dragon monsters, mostly, that have a great affinity for link summoning, but they also come with a couple of funny quirks. Many of them have an effect that triggers when targeted by the effect of a link monster, which provides some kind of utility, as well as destroying the rocket monster in question. Which is just as well because those same rocket monsters have effects that trigger during the end phase that summons a different rocket monster. And that works out very well with our Borrel Link monsters because they do a lot of targeting of our own monsters that can trigger those effects, analogous to loading up rocket bullets into your Borrel barrel, with the additional rocket summons acting as a reload of sorts. Now, an important thing to note about the link targeting effect of our rockets, which I'll be calling gunfire effects for the remainder of the video to keep things concise, is a quick effect that misses timing. If you're familiar with how Thunder Dragons work, it's kind of like Titan. This means there's a window between when your link monster targets your rocket and when it resolves, where your opponent can do just about anything to prevent the trigger from happening. So while the effect works with any link monster targeting, you'll see that the Borrels are very well equipped to facilitate them. First up, we have Anesta Rocket Dragon, a level 1 monster with 0 attack and 2200 defense, and its gunfire effect makes a face-up monster on the field unable to attack. Also, its effects are negated. These debuffs are permanent, and it does not target, making this one of the strongest tools out there for blanking an opponent's monster and taking it out of the fight. But really, what did you expect? That vial is bigger than that thing's whole head. If that thing is even just dog-sized, that's enough anesthetics to knock out 2 elephants. Rocket Synchron is a level 1 tuner monster with 0 attack and defense, and when this card is normal or special summoned, you can target a level 5 or higher dark dragon monster in your graveyard and special summon it in defense position. Its effects are negated, and it's destroyed during the end phase. Also, you can't special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn, except dark monsters. While rockets are known for their link aptitude, Varis has also dabbled in all the other summoning methods, and this is our gateway into synchros. The fact that we can only summon really high-leveled monsters does mean we can't combo this with our tiny rockets, but it does pair well with a monster we'll cover way later in this section. Honestly, the summon restriction isn't even that bad either. Once again, being limited to dark monsters is like having a rack full of weapons and only being limited to using all the guns. All things being equal, you're getting away with a crime. The only big problem is that this has to use your normal summon to use the effect. While this does still make a good special summon as a level 1 tuner, its effect will only activate on normal summon, so the rest of your cards are going to have to rely on your effects to summon them. But we should probably keep this away from Yusei. If he finds out a Synchron is missing from the family, he's going to go ballistic. Shell Rocket Dragon is a level 2 monster with 1100 attack and 2000 defense, and the gunfire effect of this card destroys a monster in the same column that this card was in, and if you do, destroy any monsters in that card's adjacent zones. So if you got a feeling that this was a shotgun shell, then you were right on the money. This has the potential to really tear up a field, but it's one of the few that actually requires you to think about what zone you summon this in, because this does interact with column play. If Shell Rocket isn't opposite a monster, it basically won't do anything, which is both very accurate and inaccurate. Like, yeah, you need to aim at least a little bit when using firearms, but shotgun should be like the least aim reliant of all of them, so I guess it's a flavor failure? I'm not trained with firearms. Our next two monsters are actually pretty similar. Auto Rocket Dragon is a level 3 monster with 1600 attack and 1000 defense, and its gunfire effect sends a spell or trap card on the field to the grave. Meanwhile, Magna Rocket Dragon is a level 4 monster with 1800 attack and 1200 defense, and its gunfire effect sends a monster on the field to the grave. They don't target, which is nice, and they don't destroy, they just send, which is very good at avoiding a lot of protections. The big benefit about non-targeting removal is that your opponent will be forced to use any of their cards they're afraid you might get rid of, otherwise they'll lose them forever. And if they do activate anything that doesn't need an immediate answer, you can just redirect your effect to another card. But it's a lot of hoops to jump through to just get rid of a single card each. These certainly aren't auto-includes, and I wouldn't even say that they're the theme's magnum opus. Metal Rocket Dragon is a level 4 monster with 1700 attack and 1400 defense, and its gunfire effect destroys all of your opponent's cards in the same column that this card was in. So like with Shell, Metal here needs to be properly positioned to make use of its effects, but we operate on a different axis. Literally. While Shell only works across the monster line, we can hit the back row as well, though because people are still mentally scarred by Mech Knights, getting a sweet 2-for-1 off this will be a rarity. Based on the matchup, you might also be able to hit a monster in the extra monster zone and the main, and if you're really lucky, you can get a back row hit as well. How's that for being a straight shooter? That is of course a joke, no one in Vrains is straight. Rocket Caliber is a level 4 tuner monster with 1700 attack and 100 defense, and you can special summon this card from your hand to a zone your Dark Link monster points to. You can also tribute this card to special summon a Dark Dragon or Machine monster from your hand. This is here to turbo out your monsters, acting either as more Dark Dragon material for whatever summon you want to make, including Synchros and Xyz by the way, we've got both, or if you need to get another Rocket monster out of your hand for their effect, essentially going -1 for a double summon. It's got a pretty useful spread of effects and stats, but I have to wonder how you actually load this thing into a gun. Like, it's not just the head part, right? You have to use all of the casing there. And heck, if I know my gun terminology, and I don't, the diameter refers to how big around the bullet is, not how long it is, so why even use that name? Rocket Coder is a level 4 Cybers type monster, a bit of a swerve, with 1700 attack and 300 defense. If this card would be used for the link summon of a Borrel monster, you can treat it as a dragon monster. If a Cybers monster you control would be used as link material for a Code Talker monster, this card in your hand can also be used as material. And if this card you control would be used as link material for a Borrel monster, a dark monster in your hand can also be used as material. This is one of those crossover monsters between pro tags and their rivals, so if Playmaker and Varis had a baby, this is what they'd look like. And you're welcome, shippers. Happy Mpreg, by the way. If you've played a Code Talker deck before, you may be familiar with the effect that lets you use link material from your hand, so it's a lot of the same going on here. The spin is that now you can do something similar with Borrel monsters, though instead of this being used from the hand as material, it lets you use another monster in your hand as material once you get this onto the field. And because it can be treated as a dragon for Borrel summons, it's very useful for making quad Borrel specifically. Most of the other Borrel monsters will actually let you use this as material anyway. Good attention to detail though, not so good when it comes to the fashion sense. I mean, sure, it looks good in this photo, but you try walking around in knee-high boots that don't actually fit to you and we'll see how far you go. Rokket Recharger is a level 4 monster with 0 attack and 2100 defense, and if any number of dark monsters you control that were special summoned from the extra deck are destroyed by a battle or artifact, you can send this card from your hand or field to the grave, then target one of those destroyed monsters to special summon a dark monster from your grave with a different original name than the targeted monster. And while you control a dark monster special summon from the extra deck, your opponent's monsters can't target this card for attacks. So it's a reactive monster reborn that summons something other than what was destroyed, which, if you have a good spread of monsters in your grave, can get you something pretty big. And I do like that there's no strings attached on that summon. It doesn't negate, there's no post-summoning banish, no nothing. As a Rokket you can summon at the end of your turn off of one of your floating effects. It's not terrible, but it's not really great either. And as far as I'm aware, guns are pretty self-contained devices. If you have to plug it in and recharge it, then it's not a gun, it's a cyber gun, which, oh, actually, that makes a lot of sense considering the setting. Never mind, move along. Rokket Tracer is a level 4 tuner monster with 1600 attack and 1000 defense, and as a quick effect, you can target a face-up card you control to destroy it, and if you do, special summon a Rokket monster from your deck, except a copy of this card. Also, you can't special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn, except dark monsters. This is probably the most played Rokket monster in the game, seeing a lot of play both in pure builds and in the infamous Dragon Link pile. It's very accessible. It turns any card into a Rokket while triggering their effects if you destroyed one, and then pivot to a bunch of different extra deck monsters. The amount of combos this can contribute to could fill a video all its own, giving you all the tools you need to wipe away your opponent's board without a trace. Silver Rokket Dragon is a level 4 monster with 1900 attack and 100 defense, and its gunfire effect lets you look at your opponent's extra deck and banish a card from it. This had a lot of hype when it was revealed as part of the new Rokket structure deck, and it makes sense. Any effect that allows you to pick apart your opponent's extra deck while looking at it is going to be highly valued, and if you're playing pure Rokket, yeah, this is a pretty good effect to trigger. But in the larger dragon environment, it doesn't quite see as much play. It turns out it's better to advance your own game plan than trying to stifle your opponents. And, you know, that's probably for the best. It wouldn't be good for a bunch of these decks running around with an accessible silver bullet. Speed Burst Dragon is a level 6 monster with 2400 attack and 600 defense, and when you take effect damage, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand, then inflict damage to your opponent equal to the damage you took, and if you do, gain life points equal to half the damage you inflicted. And when this card is tribute summoned, you can add 2 Rokket monsters with different names from your deck to your hand. That's a pretty swell effect. It's a good tribute summon effect, but you can also special summon it from your hand under certain conditions so it doesn't clog your hand too much. Still probably a bit too clunky to see real play, but hey, it's putting in the effort. And if you're up against a lot of burn strategies, you'll have a bullet with their name on it. Preferably 12 of them if we get to use all the ones on the shoulders. Absolrouter Dragon is a level 7 monster with 1200 attack and 2800 defense, and if you control a Rokket monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. And if this card is sent to the grave, you can add a Rokket monster from your deck to your hand. Notably, this works when sent to the grave in any way, and when it comes to dragons, there's a lot of ways to do that. Foolish Burial, Dragon Shrine, Dragon Ravine, take your pick. It's also one of the best cards you can summon out with Rokket Synchron, because that gives you the material for a level 8 Synchro monster and gets you another search for a follow-up. And because you can have it leap out of the hand if you have a Rokket, it's also really good for helping you climb the Link ladder. This was a huge update for the theme, even in decks that just splashed Rockets. Now all we need is a good Absolmodem Dragon and we'll be all set with the internet. Exploder Rokket Dragon is a level 7 monster with 2000 attack and defense, and its gunfire effect deals 2000 damage to each player. That's a pretty big chunk and can close out a game at the drop of a hat if you're aggressive enough. It's also pretty unique as one of our higher leveled Rokket monsters, helping to give our tuners more non-tuner levels to work with, and between our regular Rokket floating effects and other ways to deploy our monsters, it's absolutely exploding with value. Double Disruptor Dragon is a level 8 monster with 2500 attack and 1500 defense, and you contribute this card, then target 2 Rokket monsters in your grave with different names and special summon them in defense position. You can also banish this card from your grave to add a rapid trigger or heavy interlock from your deck or grave to your hand. Those 2 cards will come into play more when we talk about Borrels, so our main concern is our effect that brings back our Rokket monsters, and that's going to require you to get this onto the board first, and as a level 8 monster, that's not going to be easy. Cards like Rocket Caliber and Recharger that we've gone over previously can do the trick, as well as a few additional off-theme cards, but it's going to require you to line up your cards in just the right way, otherwise Double Disruptor is going to be disrupting you more than your opponent. Thankfully, it makes for a great piece of discard fodder for the latter half of the strategy, so it's not totally dead, though it is still a risk. Dual-wielding weapons is not for the faint of heart, even if you are just gun barrels from the elbow down. Striker Dragon is a Link 1 monster with 1000 attack, requiring any level 4 or lower dragon monster as material. If this card is Link summoned, you can add a Boot Sector launch from your deck to your hand. You can also target a face-up monster you control and a Rokket monster in your graveyard to destroy that monster on the field, and if you do, add that other monster from the grave to your hand. Now, because you have to destroy the targeted monster for this effect to resolve, this isn't necessarily a great way of triggering our Rokket monster effects, but if you don't care about getting the card from the graveyard, then it's not really a problem. The most important part is that it's the Link that searches the field spell, and it's a pretty darn good one. We'll be getting into it once we go into our spell and trap section. And because of the lax material requirements, it's a staple in Dragon Link decks, and why you probably see a lot of Rockets flying around those lists. Just don't overwork him. They don't call him Striker Dragon for no reason. He's got no qualms about going on strike. Booster Dragon is a Link 2 monster with 1900 attack, requiring 2 Rokket monsters as material. Once per turn, you can target one other face-up monster on the field, and it gains 500 attack and defense, and your opponent can't activate cards or effects in response to this effect's activation. If this Link summoned card is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the grave, you can target one other dragon monster in your grave and special summon it. Booster is a preview of what we'll see with Borrel Monsters down the line. By keeping your opponent from responding to your effect, it'll ensure that the Rockets will have room to activate their own effect, so you can either use Booster to amp up another monster, or load up your Rockets for their gunfire effects. And then, you get to float into another dragon when this gets destroyed, so if you don't get the chance to link this off, at least you get something back. It's a real booster shot for the theme. Dilingerious Dragon is a Link 2 monster with 1600 attack, requiring 2 Dark Dragon monsters as material. Once per turn during your opponent's end phase, you can target an attack position monster your opponent controls that did not declare an attack this turn, destroy it, and if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's original attack. If any number of Rokket monsters are special summoned to your field while this card is in your grave, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. This is a pretty funky monster, especially being a rung in the Link ladder that you can revive during your opponent's turn if you can summon a Rokket during that time. That way, if they summon anything during their main phase 2 and leave it in attack position, you can snipe it because they won't really have a chance to attack with anything. It's a devious little trick that's appropriate for our little holdout pistol dragon. Though, I've gotta say, Dilingerious Dragon is a bit of a tongue twister, so from now on, I'm calling this card Dylan. Overburst Dragon is a Link 2 monster with 1800 attack, requiring 2 Rokket monsters as material. It can target one other Link monster you control to special summon a Rokket monster from your hand to your zone that target points to, but the monster summoned by this effect cannot be used as Link material, also destroy it during the end phase. And when this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the grave, you can target a Rokket monster in your grave and add it to your hand. This is weird? Like, it's not enough that you have Overburst Dragon, you also need to have another Link monster so you can use its arrows to summon to its zones, and all to accomplish a summon from the hand? And a float that only works on battle destruction? Yeah, no, we don't need to take any more time to cover this thing. We can't even use this to target our Rockets for crying out loud. I'm over this one. Squib Draw is a quick play spell card that targets a Rokket monster you control, destroys it, and if you do, draws you 2 cards. Hey, the archetypal Draw 2 spell has made its appearance, cycling our cards while providing an engine to get things going. This time around, it destroys our Rokket monsters, which is pretty neat. Being a quick play is also good, because if you have to pop your Rockets for something else, you can squib the Rockets that come to replace it on a following turn. Speaking of which, what in the heck even is a squib? Let's see, it's a small firework that burns with a hissing sound before exploding. Hey, I learned something today. Never let people tell you that Yu-Gi-Oh isn't good for anything, alright? Quick Launch is a quick play spell card that special summons a Rokket monster from your deck, but it can't attack, also destroy it during the end phase. Ooh, this card, I have some words about this one. So back when Emergency Teleport wasn't as free from the Forbidden and Limited list as it is now, I was yelling up a storm constantly about how it was restricted, while Quick Launch was free to play at a full 3 copies. Neither of them are once per turn, both are quick play spells, and while the level 3 or lower psychic pool is just about always going to be broader than the available Rokket one, the quality of Rockets was absurd. Rokket Tracer alone is enough to make Quick Launch a force to be reckoned with. Now, Emergency Teleport is at 3, so now I have a bit less of an axe to grind here, though this card is still goofy. You get a free dragon, it pivots into all the links that we've already talked about, you can make a guard dragon, or whatever other dragon lines of play you have. There's tons of different decks out there that this can be slotted into. Even in a pure build, this gets us any of our bullets so we can use their effects as needed. Quick Launch may be fast acting, but it's also had a long-lasting effect on the game, for better or for worse. Boot Sector Launch is a field spell card that gives all Rokket monsters on the field a 300 attack and defense boost. It can special summon up to 2 Rokket monsters with different names from your hand in defense position, or if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can special summon Rokket monsters with different names from your grave in defense position up to that difference. So any level 4 or lower dragon monster essentially gets you this card by way of Striker Dragon. And what's wild from there is that you can link off a Rokket to make Striker, get Boot Sector Launch, use Striker's effect, destroying itself, to put the Rokket back into your hand, then summon that Rokket from your hand using Boot Sector Launch's effect. So you don't even have to give up the Rokket that you popped for link material, you'll just get it back eventually, and maybe with interest. To say nothing of how you can just draw Rockets right out of your graveyard to match your opponent's setup if they've decided to fill out their board. And with all the Rockets you're going to fire off, trust me, you'll have the material for it. If this is what we can expect from the Boot Sector, get ready for what happens when we actually load all this into memory. Tactical Exchanger is a normal trapped card that targets a face-up monster you control to destroy it, and if you do, special summon a Rokket monster with a different original name from your deck or graveyard. So it's kind of like Quick Launch if it was, bad. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's able to destroy monsters in general, so it works even if you don't have a Rokket in play. And if you do blow up a Rokket, or anything else that benefits from being destroyed, you get a boost from that. But it's just so slow, in a deck that wants you to turbo out material as quickly as possible to make big bosses. Now, I'm no tactician, but I don't think exchanging a better option for a worse option is strategically sound. Link Turret is a continuous trap card that, when activated, places 4 counters on it. Each time you take battle damage, place a counter on this card, and during your main phase 2, you can remove a counter from this card, then target a Rokket monster in your grave and special summon it, but its effects are negated. Also, it's banished when it leaves the field, but you can't special summon monsters from your extra deck the turn you activate this card, except Dark Link monsters, even if this card leaves the field. Now, you'll notice that this does not have a once per turn clause on it, so we have a continuous trap card that gets you 4 Rokket revives, at least. Anytime your opponent hits you, or you crash a monster into them, you get another counter for another revive. Now, this is balanced out by the fact that the monsters get banished when they leave the field, so you're not able to just reborn the same monster over and over again, unless you have some other effect that assists with this. But that's still a lot of material to work with should your grave be stocked enough. I would say that makes it worth the delay, though since you can only summon the monsters during your main phase 2, you'll have to wait an opponent's entire turn cycle and after a battle phase of your own to even deploy this. It's wild how good of an effect this is, and is still not playable because of that delay, but I guess that's just the nature of the game. Hey, question though, where are the cannons on this thing? I mean, if they're gonna call it a turret, they better be firing some rockets out of something. Right? Next up, let's take a look at Varis' lesser known, but still absurdly powerful extra deck theme, the Topologics. While being a hater of all things Cybers, Varis nonetheless embraced their power when provided by his skill, Storm Access. Along with them all being a Dark Cybers Link monster, they also all embody different non-Euclidean shapes, ones that defy our common understanding of 3D space, giving quite the unique design. And while that may have been futuristic enough, it also references network topology, which, as I am learning right now, is kind of the makeup of a communications network. And if you fiddle around with all the knobs and buttons, can cause these systems to crash, which is emblematic of their effects that trigger mandatorily once you summon to one of the zones that their arrows point to. Hold on to your seats, folks, things are about to get messy. Topologic Trizbana is a Link 3 monster with 2500 attack, requiring 2 or more effect monsters as material. And if any number of monsters are special summoned to your zones this card points to, banish as many of those monsters as possible, also as many spells and trap cards on the field as possible, and if you do, inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each of their cards banished by this effect. That's an important thing to keep in mind. While it will banish both players' eligible cards, you only burn your opponent for the cards that they lose. So no setting 5 and hoping you burn your opponent for 3000 damage, including the monster you banish. If you find yourself in a meta where people are setting a lot of back row, do not overlook this card. If you have a way to summon a monster at a moment's notice, this is a great way to spring a quick effect banishing Heavy Storm on the opposition, and maybe a little bit of monster banishing as well. It's very accessible and ridiculously easy to trigger, so if you're up against any back row heavy strategy, this is the perfect tool and will be the Trizbana of their existence. Topologic Bomber Dragon is a Link 4 monster with 3000 attack, requiring 2 or more effect monsters as material. If another monster is special summoned to a zone a Link monster points to while this card is on the field, destroy all monsters in the main monster zones. Also, your other monsters can't attack for the rest of the turn. After damage calculation, if this card attacked an opponent's monster, inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's original attack. Basically, the effect is a main monster zone dark hole, giving you a kind of similar tool to Trizbana's, though destruction is less universally helpful as removal, though can still put in some good work. It's also done its own part in breaking the game, as this combined with Phoenician Cluster Amaryllis and enough plant monsters in the grave to make an FTK. Effectively, you'd have Amaryllis summon itself to one of Bomber Dragon's Link zones, which would then cause everything to blow up. The Amaryllis would deal 800 damage, you'd banish a plant monster from your grave to revive the Amaryllis because, as it turns out, you are still in the end phase. Summon that Amaryllis to Bomber's Link point and do it all over again. Bomber Dragon doesn't see much play today, but can, like all the Topologics, still cause havoc in the right hands. If you can, grab it in your hands. The Klein bottle doesn't exactly have a good handle. Topologic Gumblar Dragon is a Link 4 monster with 3000 attack, requiring 2 or more monsters as material. If another monster is special summoned to a zone any Link monster points to while this monster is on the field, discard 1 or 2 random cards. Then your opponent discards the same number. During your main phase, if this card is extra linked and your opponent has at least 1 card in their hand, you can make your opponent discard 1 or 2 cards, whichever is higher. Then, if they have no cards in their hand, inflict 3000 damage to your opponent. But you can only use 1 effect of this card per turn and only once per turn. Now this is a broken card. It was infamous for hand looping the opposition down to only a couple of cards while building up a fantastically powerful board itself. Play as skillfully as you want. If you only have 2 cards to work with versus 4 points of interaction, buddy, you are out of luck. So yeah, this card is hella banned, and with how much easier it is to Link summon nowadays, especially Cyberse monsters, I find it difficult that it'll ever come back in its current form. Which is unfortunate, because the word Gumblar is just so funny and does not in any way convey that this is a menace to society. I think more like Gumby than Handrip at this point. Topologic Zeraboros is a Link 4 monster with 3000 attack, requiring 2 or more effect monsters as material. You can't summon or set monsters to extra monster zones that this card points to, preventing us from using this card to make a V-Link, unfortunately. And it gains 200 attack for each banished card. If another monster is special summoned to a zone this Link monster points to while this monster is on the field, banish all cards on the field. And once per turn, during the standby phase of the next turn after this card was banished by its own effect, special summon this banished card. Of all the legal Topologic monsters, this is easily the strongest. It's a board wipe banishing that will return this monstrosity even stronger than it was before. It's incredibly powerful, though not as repeatable as the previous ones. See, if you summon this to the extra monster zone, then there are a lot of zones that this effect will work on. But once it returns to your main monster zones, well, you have a few options. You can either summon it to any zone below the EMZs, and at that point there's no way the effect can trigger. Summon to the center, and now you can't use the extra monster zones, but your opponent can't for fear of wiping the entire board again. The moderate choice is to return Zeraboros back to either the far left or far right zones, as that'll mark one EMZ as a dangerous board wipe. So if you can occupy one of those extra monster zones, your opponent will be stuck between a rock and a, fun stuff like that. But no matter what, as the banishment grows, so does this, meaning it works well in any strategy that operates on that axis. But be sure you don't commit too much to the board while this thing is live. You wouldn't want to be a player that eats their own board, would you? Detonation Code is a continuous trap card that, if you control a Topologic Link monster, lets you target a dark, non-link dragon, machine, or Cyberse monster in your grave and special summon it. And during the standby phase of the next turn after this card was banished from the spell and trap zone, you can set this card. This gives you an on-demand way to trigger any of your Topologic effects as long as you have one of those dark monsters that match any of Varis' monster types in your grave. And the fact that it returns itself after being banished by Trisbana or Ouroboros is a really cool touch. Though if you're looking to utilize the effects of the Topologics like that, you probably already have a method to do that, so this is kind of redundant. I certainly don't feel like it's up to code. It wasn't just Rockets that made up the main deck, but a number of other Dark Dragon and Machine monsters as well. Not to mention some, well, let's just say that Varis might be a bit of a Yugiboomer. Chobham Armor Dragon is a level 1 dragon monster with 0 attack and defense, and when an opponent's monster declares a direct attack, you can special summon this card from your hand in attack position, and if you do, for the rest of the turn, it can't be destroyed by battle, and the battle damage you take from battles involving this card is halved. If this card is sent to the grave as link material, you can target one other dark monster in your grave and add it to your hand. Also, your opponent can add a monster from their grave to their hand. Now, summoning this in attack position is rough, but hey, half damage is better than full damage, and you get some recovering when you link it off. The problem is that your opponent also gets to recycle a monster, and while in the anime that can be written around, in the game itself, giving your opponent any hand trap they want back or some kind of engine piece they want is patently absurd. The card you'll aim to get back will have to be extraordinarily powerful to balance that out. And I don't know what that card would have to be at the moment, but I do know that the armor is giving off big Gundam energy, and I love that. Ooh, or Liger Zero Panzer mode. God, I miss Zoids. Overflow Dragon is a level 1 dragon monster with 0 attack and defense, and when any number of monsters on the field are destroyed by a card effect except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. Then, if 2 or more monsters on the field were destroyed by that effect, you can special summon an Overflow token, which is a level 1 dark dragon monster. So this is a little insurance policy to help get you some bodies if your monsters get wiped, though it can be used offensively. It only checks to see if monsters on the field are destroyed, not just yours. So if you hit your opponent with a Raigeki, you'd still get to summon this, and if they had 2 or more monsters when you did that, that's 2 free link materials, which you can use for whatever you want. It's really cool that you've got a monster that can cover you from both angles, so no matter what happens, you'll always be able to go with the Overflow. Sniffer Dragon is a level 2 dragon monster with 800 attack and 400 defense, and if this card is normal or special summoned, you can add another copy of Sniffer Dragon from your deck to your hand. Yeah, just one summon and you get another in your hand to keep the chain going, ensuring you have material for future turns for more link summons. And there's some other things to talk about when it comes to this monster, but let's be real, you're already in the comments typing Sniffa because you're a bunch of meme lords, so I'm not even gonna bother. Triggering Worm is a level 2 dragon monster with 600 attack and defense, and if this card is sent to the grave as link material for the link summon of a dark monster, you can special summon this card from your grave in attack position to your zone that link monster points to, but it cannot be used as link material. And if this card is destroyed or banished by an effect activated by a link monster, you draw a card. So the main idea is to link this into something that will get rid of the reborn worm so you can get that draw. And as it just so happens, we have the perfect monsters for it, the Topologics. Summoning it back to any of their zones will, well, trigger their effects, which will get rid of Worm, as well as any number of your opponent's cards. And I cannot believe it took me this long to realize that's why it's called Triggering Worm. Triggering things is the whole reason this card exists! And here I was about to make fun of it for having the worst spelling of worm in the game, but truly, I was the worm in this scenario. Defrag Dragon is a level 3 dragon monster with 1000 attack and 600 defense, and you can special summon this card from your hand by sending any other monster from your hand to the grave. You can only special summon copies of this card once per turn this way. And if this card is in your grave, you can banish 3 monsters from your grave with the same name except copies of this card, and special summon this card. This means Defrag Dragons work well in either one of 2 decks. Ones that have you playing a lot of playsets of monsters, Or you're playing one of those decks that has monsters that all end up with the same name in their graveyard, like Harpy Ladies or Cyber Dragons, which seems like a pretty good deal because in that scenario, you'd only be getting rid of a defragment of their power. Hibernation Dragon is a level 3 dragon monster with 600 attack and 1500 defense, and if this card is normal or special summoned, you can target a level 4 or lower dragon monster in your grave and add it to your hand. While you control no link monsters, except during the turn this card was sent to the grave, you can banish this card from your grave, then target a dark dragon link monster in your grave and special summon it. Wait, this one actually sounds pretty legit. It recovers you a card on summon and reborns a Dark Dragon Link on a future turn if you don't already have any in play. If not for that last turn delay, this sounds like it would be a Dragon Link staple. But in the end, I do think they're right to pass this one over. But if you find yourself in some kind of limited or sealed environment and this card is part of the pool, do yourself a favor and make sure you don't sleep on it. DMZ Dragon is a level 4 dragon monster with 0 attack and 2000 defense, and once per turn you can target a level 4 or lower dragon monster in your grave and a monster you control. Equip that monster in your grave to that monster on the field as an equip spell that makes it gain 500 attack, and at the end of the damage step, if your monster equipped with an equipped card attacked, you can banish this card from your grave to destroy as many cards as possible equipped to that monster you control, and if you do, that monster can make a second attack in a row. So it feels like the prescribed combo is to summon this alongside a dragon, equip a small dragon to that other monster, providing it a little boost, then you find a way to get DMZ into the grave so you can get the second attack in after the initial attack with your equipped dragon. That's, is fine, I suppose, but it is a lot of hoops to jump through to get a second attack. Now, people smarter than me are going to have to find out how any of this relates back to the DMZ of computer technology, because all I can think of with this card is demilitarized zones, and folks, getting to attack more with giant dragons just doesn't seem to fit the bill. Gateway Dragon is a level 4 dragon monster with 1600 attack and 1400 defense, and if your opponent controls a link monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. And you can only special summon copies of this card once per turn this way. Also once per turn, you can special summon a level 4 or lower dark dragon monster from your hand. I could actually see this being a fantastic little card during Master Rule 4's initial run. You basically had to run link monsters if you wanted your deck to function. So not only did you get this monster out for free, but another dragon without ever having to commit your normal summon. It's no summon from deck kind of effect, but if your deck was geared towards dark dragons, you were probably sitting on a few in your hand anyway. Though, now that we live under the Master Rule 4 revision, that's not quite as universal as it once was, though not impossible. It's a pretty good card, but still ranks pretty low on my favorite gateway cards of all times list. It's certainly no of the 6, but really, what is? Background Dragon is a level 5 dragon monster with 1600 attack and 1800 defense, and if this card is in the grave and you control no cards, you can special summon both this card and a level 4 or lower dragon monster from your hand in defense position, but banish this card when it leaves the field. That's actually a pretty killer first move. Use Foolish Burial or Dragon Shrine to bin this, turbo out some monsters, and now you've got 2 material to work with. It's kind of like Gateway, but with more possibilities to actually brick. I mean, if this ends up in your hand, then it's good discard fodder, but at worst, you can actually normal summon Gateway Dragon to get things going. This one has no backup plan, it only works in specific situations, and with better options out there, we don't really have many reasons to go to bat for this one. Maybe there are some support cards that go really well with this, but before you commit too heavily, you'll want to make sure you do a background dragon check. And speaking of which, Checksum Dragon is a level 6 dragon monster with 400 attack and 2400 defense, and when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can special summon this card from your hand, then gain life points equal to half this card's defense. Also, this attack position card cannot be destroyed by battle. So unless some other effect is in play, Checksum is going to gain you 1200 life points when it hits the board, and with 2400 defense, it'll withstand a lot of punishment. And if the opponent has something bigger than that and you want to keep this around, it'll cost you a hefty chunk of life points, but you can summon this in attack position to prevent its battle destruction. It's an odd battle fader to be sure, but it's level 6, and that's a pretty good segue into any rank 6 monster like Hieratic Dragon King of Atum. And to access that, many dragon decks would pay a handsome checksum. Link Belt Wall Dragon is a level 6 Earth Dragon, how daring, with 0 attack and 2100 defense that cannot be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned by its own effect, which is, when you Link Summon, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, place 2 counters on it. If a monster is Link Summoned, remove 2 counters from this card, or all of them if there are less than 2. Once per turn, during each standby phase, place one of those counters on Link Belt Wall Dragon, and while on the field, no monster can be Link Summoned unless this card has at least as many of those counters on it as the Link rating of the monster you want to Link Summon. Also while on the field, monsters can't attack except Link monsters. So how in the world is this all supposed to work? Basically, it's saying that you're not able to Link Summon anything unless the rating of that Link monster is at or below the number of counters on Link Belt. So when summoned, it has 2 counters, so you can Link Summon a Link 2 monster, at which point it loses 2 counters, effectively keeping both players from Link Summoning at that point. This cap is raised by 1 during each standby phase, as it gets a counter during that time, so as long as this is on the field, the amount of Link monsters that can be summoned grinds to a slow crawl, and would see some level of play during early Link days as a way to floodgate the mechanic, blindsiding most players, partly because they had never heard of this card, and partly because the effect text is a horrifying slurry of rules nonsense. As of now, it doesn't really see any competitive play, really just standing as a testament to Varis' crusade against Link monsters, as well as another tool in the stun player's bag of tricks. But whatever you do, keep these monsters away from heavy weapons guy. Link belts have been hunted to near extinction because of that guy. Noctivision Dragon is a level 7 dragon monster with 0 attack and 2800 defense, and when your opponent activates a card or effect that targets any number of face-down cards you control as a quick effect, you can banish this card from your grave to negate that effect. Also, your opponent can't target those face-down cards with card effects for the rest of the turn. If any number of dark dragon monsters are special summoned to your field, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if this card is sent to the grave as Link material, you can draw a card. This actually has seen some play as an extender in Dragon Link decks. It's a free summon alongside your myriad dark dragons, gives you a way to draw when you link with it, and randomly provides protection to your face-down cards, which is all very funny. And while that protection banishes it, you could just as easily keep summoning this back from the grave with a card like Red Eye's Darkness Metal Dragon, and now you have yourself a little bit of a draw engine going, giving you more cards to deal with more situations. Which means that, with this card by your side, you'll never have to take a shot in the dark. Cracking Dragon is a level 8 machine monster with 3000 attack and 0 defense. It can't be destroyed by battle with a monster that has an equal or lower level than it, and when your opponent normal or special summons exactly one monster and no other monsters are summoned while this monster is on the field, you can make that monster lose attack equal to its level times 200 until the end of the turn, and if you do, burn your opponent for damage equal to the amount of attack lost by this effect. The obligatory monster with cool protection made to interact poorly against the new mechanic monster. Basically, this checks for levels, which gets cleared by just about any Link monster of comparable power, though it also gets washed by Xyz, which I don't think was the intention. Though I have to say, this card is actually kinda scary. The burn effect is not once per turn, so if this is around while your opponent goes on a big summoning spree, you could get away with doing a lot of damage for free. It's like a low-key tax dragon in that regard, especially since it also debuffs those monsters for the turn. Just keep in mind how the damage is calculated. If the opponent summons a level 4 monster but has less than 800 attack, let's say 500, we'll try to reduce them by 800 because 4 times 200 is 800, but because the opponent only lost 500 attack, you only deal 500 damage. The big fun in here comes when you start giving your opponent kaijus because they have huge levels and attack stats for us to mess with, and they become easier to run over as a result. So while it may not be the most spectacular boss monster ever built, the kinds of things it can get away with are kinda cracked. Actually, while we're here, I'd like to take a bit of a detour, because while Varis does use Cracking Dragon for a bit, it's much more well known as the workhorse of the foot soldiers of the Knights of Hanoi, and they have their own little suite of support cards to help it out. And I'm not really going to get a chance to do the Knights of Hanoi explained, so I'll take this opportunity to talk about Hackworm. a level 1 Dark Machine monster with 400 attack and 0 defense, and if your opponent controls no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. Wow, a free monster you can drop from your hand if your opponent's board is empty, regardless of what yours looks like. It's kinda like a solitaire player's dream. It even kinda looks like a baby cracking dragon, and if this one's the infant, our next one is the awkward teenager. Jack Wyvern is a level 4 Dark Machine monster with 1800 attack and 0 defense that lets you banish this card and a face-up machine monster you control to target a dark monster in your grave and special summon it. What I like is that you don't necessarily have to be playing a Dark Machine deck to make this work. You just need a machine to feed it so you can get back any dark monster. But the idea is to use your hackworms as either tribute fodder or as cards to feed Jack Wyvern to get Cracking Dragon out of your grave. Also, I think I'm just stealing this card's name for a character. Having someone named Jack Wyvern is at least a 2x cool multiplier. Lastly, we have Air Cracking Storm, an equipped spell card you can only equip to a machine monster. When this attacking monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can activate this effect so that it can make a second attack during this battle phase, and your other monsters cannot attack the turn you activate this effect. This card is funny because for all the effects that Cracking Dragon has, none of them are particularly battle related, so I guess they just wanted to make this a more imposing threat during battle. It only gives a second attack too, so no wiping an opponent's board by continuing to rip their monsters apart. Maybe there's a machine monster out there that wants this kind of effect to the detriment of its teammates, but I can't really think of any at the moment. Decks like Cyber Dragon already have strong multi-attack effects, so for this to be effective, we need a perfect cracking storm of factors. Alright, let's get back on track with some Link monsters. Twin Triangle Dragon is a Link 2 dragon monster with 1200 attack, requiring 2 level 4 or lower dragon monsters except tokens as material. When this card is Link summoned, you can pay 500 life points, then target 1 level 5 or higher monster in your grave and special summon it to your zone this card points to, but it can't attack. Also, its effects are negated, which means you're basically only using this to climb the Link ladder, which, hey, ain't that bad. Especially if you bring back something like Knock Division, because while its effects on the field are negated, the effects that will trigger in the grave will be more than live. Also, cool touch that the triangles look like Gateway Dragon's gates for some really good continuity with how they were used in the anime. Though it is clearly trying to compensate for its lack of power with geometry. The triangle may be the strongest shape in nature, but what if they had 2 triangles? Flash Charge Dragon is a Link 3 dragon monster with 2300 attack, requiring 2 or more dragon monsters as material. You can't summon or set monsters to zones this card points to because, once again, they were allergic to V-Links at the time, and once per turn, if any number of monsters are normal or special summoned to a zone this card points to, except during the damage step, you can destroy 1 monster this card points to, and if you do, inflict 500 damage to your opponent. And when a card or effect is activated that targets this face-up card as a quick effect, you can tribute a monster to negate the activation. This card has one of 2 modes. Either you play it to your EMZ and threaten half of the zones your opponent has access to, or you get it into your main monster zone and threaten one or both of the EMZs, effectively keeping you from using the extra deck, at least at time of printing, while making it much harder for your opponent to use Link monsters. Also, it comes with a way to negate effects pointed at it, which is kind of funny. This monster never really caught on, but does have some familiar design principles that we'd see in the Topologics, giving us a clear showcase of how to do these effects well. The real question is, how much am I going to have to shell out for an RC car version because Flash Charge Dragon's design rips? Triple Burst Dragon is a Link 3 dragon monster with 2400 attack, requiring 2 or more monsters except tokens as material. Once per turn during the damage step, when a spell card, trap card, or monster effect is activated as a quick effect, you can negate the activation. It deals piercing battle damage, and during your main phase, except the turn this card was special summoned, you can tribute this card, then target a Link 2 or lower monster in your grave and special summon it. Then you can special summon a level 4 or lower dragon monster from your hand. This is a pretty monumental monster for a lot of reasons. As a largely generic Link 3, this makes for a great stop along most summoning chains that don't have a more specialized option. If you're worried about floating effects when you run over an opponent's monster, this answers them kind of making it a pseudo-Armades, and even helps to push damage through defensive setups. Because of all these factors, this card has a number of utility cases. Personally, I remember when this was the link of choice when going up against Sky Striker decks. Because if this ran over one of their link monsters, it would prevent Ray's effect of replacing it to keep the chain going. However, the oft-forgotten third effect is fascinating, because it's kind of like a desynchro or defusion, a de-link if you will, letting you recycle any of your link 2 or below monsters from the graveyard, of which there are a lot of options, and gets you a small dragon out of your hand for free. Now, in today's breakneck pace of play, this is more famous as the link monster you use for a downward pointing arrow to enable Guard Dragon Pisty, before linking it off into something like Borrel Dragon, but that doesn't detract from its significance. And with a grin like that, you can tell that it's loving every moment of the spotlight. Vorticular Drumgin is a Link 3 dragon monster with 1000 attack, requiring 3 Dark Dragon monsters as material. If this card is special summoned, you can draw a card, and if this effect resolves, the unused monster zones that this card points to cannot be used for the rest of the turn. So this is... Okay, so on the initial summon, it's a -1. You use 3 monsters to make this, and you get a draw. The additional trade-off is the zones that you can't use, if it points to any unused ones. But the trigger effect triggers anytime it's special summoned, not just on Link Summon, so revival effects can bring this back and net you a draw, though you once again lose your unused zones. This can be mitigated by having monsters in the zones that it points to, and that's kinda cool in and of itself. But with such a steep onboarding cost and not a particularly thrilling payout, it's no wonder why you probably haven't heard of this card until right now. Still, there is something to be said for a monster that marches to the beat of its own drumgin. Alright, that does it for the monsters. Now it's time for the spells and traps that Varis kept in his back pocket. Link Burst is a normal spell card that targets a Link monster you control and a monster your opponent controls, destroys them, then draws you a card. This reads a lot like Gemini Spark, but where that quick play spell was the cornerstone of Hero Beat when that deck was around, this card is just kind of okay. In the anime, this destroyed Booster Dragon, which itself has an on-destruction effect, which brings attention to the fact that any links with similar effects can be enabled by this card, but that's about as complex as it gets. I guess those twin triangles weren't so strong after all, huh? Dragonoid Generator is a continuous spell card that you activate by paying 1000 life points. During your main phase, you can special summon a Dragonoid token, which is a level 1 Earth Machine monster with 300 attack and defense in attack position. Also, you can't special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. Also, during the end phase, your opponent special summons a Dragonoid token to their field in attack position, even if this card leaves the field. And you can use this effect up to twice per turn. So, to clarify, you pay 1000 life points to get this onto the field. You don't pay that cost again whenever you go for the token summoning effect. This gives you some pretty slick tokens that you can use for tribute summoning, since accessing the extra deck just got a bit rougher. But you also have to be okay with giving your opponent material for their own summons, because they're not going to have to deal with the same restrictions. But that's not entirely a bad thing. There has been a pivot towards actually benefiting from your opponent getting monsters, as it shuts down certain board breakers, but it gets a little less good when it keeps you from using the extra deck. Not to mention that your opponent only gets those tokens during the end phase, so any effects that would rely on your opponent having a monster just aren't going to work. I could see this re-emerging as some kind of strange tech pick in an archetype or pile deck down the line, taking advantage of some strange game design quirk or another, and I look forward to the controversy that's going to generate. Fire Prison is a field spell card that gives all dragon monsters on the field a 300 defense point boost. If any Link monsters are on the field, neither player can Link summon a Link monster with a lower Link rating than the highest Link rating on the field. Monsters can't attack except for Link monsters, and while 2 or more Cyberse Link monsters are on the field, you negate the activated effects of all Cyberse monsters, and Cyberse monsters can't attack, can't be targeted for attacks, and can't be targeted by card effects. Yeah, this was basically custom built to be an anti-playmaker card. It hits every single thing you'd ever expect the guy to play, and it gets really goofy when Link Belt Wall Dragon gets involved. Fire Prison basically says you can't perform a Link summon unless that Link monster is at or above the highest Link rating on the field, but Link Belt only lets you Link summon if its rating is at or lower than the number of counters that it has. So you'd have to wait for a Link Belt to accumulate enough counters to perform a bigger Link summon. Now, that's about as anime as it gets, and the real solution here is to just use removal to get rid of one or both of these cards. Neither have any particularly robust fortitude. But the idea is pretty cool, and if anything, we did get a very funny episode of progression playoffs out of it, so it all kind of evens out. Magical Cylinders is a normal trap card that sets a magic cylinder directly from your deck or graveyard, and if set from the deck, it can be activated this turn. And when you activate Magic Cylinder, you can banish this card from your grave to double the damage inflicted to your opponent. Now, this card isn't even used by Varis, but you know what he does play? Magic Cylinder! You probably actually picked up on that. This is kind of like legacy support, and I have to say, the flavoring of the cylinders as bullet casings, beautiful stuff. Now, the drawback is that if your opponent attacks, you can't activate cylinders, set original cylinder, and activate it to that same attack, even if you set it from the deck, enabling you to activate it the turn it was set, because it'll miss the activation timing. So you'll have to set it before the attack is declared, which kind of robs you of the surprise factor. But it does make for an excellent deterrent, especially with that damage doubling effect. So don't expect to actually pull this off, but honestly, it's just good to see that even Revolver appreciates the classics. And speaking of classics, we have Mind Crush. Yeah, Mind Crush, a normal trap card that has you declaring a card name, and if that card is in your opponent's hand, they must discard all copies of it. Otherwise, you discard a random card. A short effect, but with monumental consequences. This was, for a time, one of the most powerful trap cards in the game. Like, yeah, if you call it right, you get to rip 1, maybe 2, 3 if you have the Mandate of Heaven, out of your opponent's hand. But it was more than that, because under some old rules, if the card you discarded didn't account for all legal copies of that card, for instance, let's say you call Mystic Tomato and your opponent discards 1, but across all public information zones your opponent only has that one Mystic Tomato, your opponent was obligated to show their hand to confirm this was done, and that meant you got perfect hand knowledge, one of the most valuable things you can have in this game. This card made search effects a liability, because as per rules of the game, you have to reveal any kind of search to your opponent if the card you're searching has a specific quality, and that gives away exactly the kind of information the user of Mind Crush needs. But even without that knowledge, there are still a lot of reasons to shotgun this card. Maybe you've identified that only a single card can break your board, so risking a random discard is more than worthwhile to ensure your opponent either doesn't have it, or getting rid of it. Maybe you want to discard a card really bad, so you call something outrageous that can't possibly be true. So you get the discard, and bonus, still get to confirm your opponent's hand. You just have to make sure that both players have at least one card in hand, because you can't risk discarding a card getting it wrong if you don't have any cards in your hand to discard. While at the height of its power, this card was a competitive staple for years. You just couldn't escape it. It was somehow a better trap dust shoot. But then, everything changed. As of now, you are no longer allowed to check your opponent's hidden information zones to confirm if it's been fully resolved. You just have to trust your opponent. If you Mind Crush an Ash Blossom and your opponent only discards 1, you've got to trust that it's the only one they have. If you use Lullaby of Obedience for a card and your opponent says they don't have it, you no longer get to search their deck to confirm this. Now, does this open up the floor for a little bit of tomfoolery? Sure. And to protect myself from any explaining how to cheat allegations, I'm just going to leave it at that. But is it better for the game overall? Honestly, I think so. Gaining that kind of additional information is really, really strong, and for it to be a secondary benefit to such low investment cards is pretty ridiculous. And honestly, while I always encourage everyone to be wary of their surroundings during a tournament, it's just better for the community that we don't go into events like this with this mindset that our opponents are always trying to pull one over on us, at least from angles outside the game. And all of this in this episode because a character from Vrains used a DM-era card that no other character actually used. This is not where I thought this episode was going. And we're not done yet! Mirror Force Launcher is a continuous trap card that, once per turn, during your main phase, you can discard a monster to add a Mirror Force from your deck or grave to your hand. If this set card is destroyed by an opponent's card effect and sent to the grave, you can set this card from your grave and a Mirror Force from your hand, deck, or grave, and they can both be activated that turn. Now, keep in mind, this looks for Mirror Force specifically, not any of the various flavors of it. It punishes your opponent for trying to remove it by making the Mirror Force happen even faster, and once it is deployed, you can turn monsters into Mirror Forces, making your opponent's attacks that much more difficult to commit to. It's also probably the reason why we got magical cylinders in the first place, to carry on the tradition of Varis having high-tech modern gadgets to fix up old favorites. But once your opponent is aware of what you're doing, don't expect them to fall right into it. There's no such thing as a free launch, after all. Remote Rebirth is a normal trap card that targets a monster in your opponent's grave and special summons it to an opponent's main monster zone your Link monster points to. This is basically another way to trigger the Topologic Monster effects, though could potentially see play in any deck with opposing facing Link arrows to get their effects online. Which does technically mean that just about any deck is capable of running the Gimmick Puppet Nightmare Lock. Oh, but it's Sanctifier, that's the problem. No, I'm not biased! Red Reboot is a counter trap card that, when your opponent activates a trap card, you negate the activation of it, and if you do, set that card face down. Then, that opponent can set another trap card directly from their deck. However, for the rest of the turn after this card resolves, your opponent can't activate trap cards. But the big kicker is the last line, that allows you to activate this card from your hand by paying half your life points. This card was a side deck staple on and off since its release, giving you a pretty comprehensive way to answer all trap cards. Just make it so your opponent can't use them at all. It hardly even matters that your opponent gets an extra trap card because they can't use it. And because you're normally going to be using this on your turn, you'll be in a position to close out the game, so you won't even have to worry about the downsides if you're aggressive enough. And while I personally love that we get to stuff it to all those annoying trap card decks, it is best for the game that it is currently banned. We all hate lingering floodgate effects, and in all fairness, this is one of them. And shutting off a whole portion of the game is just not gonna be healthy, even if it does mean I can no longer auto-win against my lifelong nemesis, Altergeist! Alright, now it's time for the part we've all been waiting for, the Borrel Monsters. A series of dark dragon monsters with some heinous effects, as well as some themed spells and traps. Borrel Riot Dragon is a level 8 ritual monster with 3000 attack and 2500 defense that you can ritual summon with the card Heavy Interlock. When your opponent special summons any number of monsters as a quick effect, you can negate the special summon, and if you do, destroy those monsters. Then, destroy this card or a Rokket monster you control. If this card is in your grave, you can target a Borrel or Rokket monster in your grave to destroy a card you control or in your hand, and if you do, add that target to your hand. But as with most ritual monsters, you don't get the full picture until you talk about the ritual spell. Heavy Interlock is a ritual spell card that can ritual summon Riot Dragon by attributing monsters from your hand or field. But you can also destroy Rokket monsters from your hand or face-up field as well, whose total levels equal up to 8 or more. The monster special summoned by this effect can't be destroyed by battle with a monster special summoned from the extra deck, and is unaffected by the activated effects of monsters special summoned from the extra deck. So on top of Riot Dragon being immune to most anything extra deck related, Heavy Interlock will also trigger your Rokket floating effects, which you otherwise wouldn't get if you just attributed them like most other ritual spells. As for what role the monster plays, Riot keeps your opponent off of inherent summons, but even if you never summon it, this ritual still puts in work from the graveyard, popping one of your cards to put a Rokket monster, or a Borrel if need be, from your grave into your hand, giving you a way to recycle and enable your monsters. It's even searchable with pre-preparation of rites if you're of a mind to play them. This is also where Double Disruptor Dragon comes in. Once you get that in the graveyard, it can search you Heavy Interlock, as well as another card we'll talk about in a moment, as well as being the full 8 levels needed to summon out Riot Dragon. But you have to be really committed to the bit. If you plan on making the most of this, you're gonna want to make sure you have all of your Riot gear. Borrel Furious Dragon is a level 8 fusion monster with 3000 attack and 2500 defense, requiring 2 Dark Dragon monsters as material. As a quick effect, it can target a monster you control and a card your opponent controls and destroy them, and you can banish this card from your grave, then target a Dark Link monster in your grave and special summon it, but it can't activate its effects this turn. And while it's not necessary to summon this, let's also take a look at the intended fusion spell, Rapid Trigger. A quick play spell card that fusion summons a fusion monster from your extra deck by destroying the materials listed on it from your field, but it can only attack monsters special summoned from the extra deck. Also, it's unaffected by activated effects from any other monsters special summoned from the extra deck. Like Heavy Interlock, it destroys the material so that the rockets can replace themselves during the end phase, and this also makes the monster warded against extra deck summoned monsters. Though since it can only attack those same monsters, it's a little bit of a debuff. And remember, Double Disruptor also grabs that spell. As for Furious itself, while it won't trigger your rocket gunfire effects since Furious is not a link monster, it'll still end up triggering the floating effect, so you can leverage them as removal, which is pretty slick. It's like a Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer at home, and if you ever have to get rid of this, or lose it somehow, you can then banish it to regain access to any of your dark links, and while the effects are on a bit of a cooldown, if it survives to future turns, your opponent will be in a lot of trouble, meaning this monster has a lot of tenacity that's going to make your opponent positively furious. Borrel Savage Dragon is a level 8 Synchro monster with 3000 attack and 2500 defense, requiring generic material. If this card is Synchro summoned, you can equip a Link monster from your grave to this card, and if you do, place Borrel counters on this card equal to that Link monster's Link rating. This monster gains half of the attack of the monster equipped to it by its effect. And when your opponent activates a card or effect as a quick effect, you can remove a Borrel counter from this card to negate the activation. This is arguably the most famous of the Borrel extra deck monsters, and for good reason. It's a generic Omni negate as long as you have a Link engraved to get those Borrel counters. The more Link rating that it has, the more turns you can use the negate, and the bigger the Link is, the stronger Savage gets, making it even more annoying to deal with. It was a staple in any deck that had the spare tuners and right level combination, as well as the Link monsters needed to complete the process, so it was everywhere, especially in my old other Nemesis's deck, Dragon Link. But at time of recording, this card is currently banned in the TCG, so you no longer have to worry about it over the course of paper play. Now you just have to deal with it in Master Duel, probably the most accessible platform for playing this game. Great. Borrel X-Charge Dragon is a rank 4 Xyz monster with 3000 attack and 2500 defense, requiring 2 level 4 Dark Dragon monsters as material. Neither player can target this Xyz summoned card with monster effects except its own, and once per turn you can detach a material from this card, then target a face-up monster on the field. It loses 600 attack and defense, then you can special summon a Borrel monster from your grave, but banish it during the end phase. Also, you can't special summon other monsters or attack directly for the rest of the turn. This one never really got off the ground. The targeting protection and stat line is pretty good, especially for a rank 4 monster, but the effect is such a drag. The debuff can help you run over a monster, and our Borrels are very strong, so getting them back gives you a lot of damage. But then you've got that special summon lock, and you can't even attack directly, so if you clear out your opponent's monsters too soon, you won't be able to close out the game. It's not useless, but its use cases are so narrow and require such specific circumstances that you're almost never going to use it. Which is a real shame. You can't just capitalize the X in the middle of the name and make the monster suck. It's not fair! Mini Borrel Dragon is a Link 2 monster with 800 attack, requiring 2 Rokket monsters as material. If you control a Borrel Link monster while this card is in your grave, you contribute a Link 3 or lower monster to special summon this monster, but it can't be used as material for the Link summon of a monster with the same Link rating as the tributed monster. So Mini Borrel doesn't do anything by itself. It's just kind of a strange ladder climbing tool. Like, if you tribute a Link 1 monster for it, you've increased your total Link rating that you have access to by 1. And in the olden days, this let you get side-pointing Link arrows into your main monster zones to help with your extra deck summons. Today though, it amounts to little more than a cool design. Maybe not a particularly efficient one though. 3 coil off that Revolver plus the placement must be hell on that thing's knees. Quad Borrel Dragon is a Link 2 monster with 1000 attack, requiring 2 dragon monsters, including a Rokket monster, as material. You can discard a card, then target a face-up monster on the field. You can't special summon Link 2 or lower monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. Also, destroy the targeted monster, then if it was a Link monster, you can special summon any number of Rokket monsters with different names from your hand or grave up to its Link rating. This is a pretty interesting card, as it has a lot of utility. The immediate usage is to have Quad Borrel destroy itself to summon 2 of your Rokket monsters, or you can pop an opponent's monster. Heck, if your opponent has a Link monster, you can pop it and get your Rockets, cause it doesn't care whose Link you destroy, just that you destroy one. And on top of all that, it's a Link that can target your Rockets to trigger their gunfire effects. It's a pretty sweet utility monster, and is probably one of the coolest Borrels we have access to. Having sawed-off shotguns for arms is as groovy as it gets. Borrel Code Dragon is a Link 3 monster with 2500 attack, requiring 2 or more effect monsters as material. This card can be destroyed by card effects while a Link monster points to it, and at the end of the damage step, if this card that was Link summoned using 3 monsters as material battles an opponent's monster, you can destroy all monsters on the field. You can also banish this card from your grave to banish a dark monster with 3000 or more attack from the field, and if you do, special summon a Topologic monster from your extra deck or grave. So this has a lot of connections to the Topologic line of monsters, the shape, the board wipe, and the fact that it can summon out Topologics. Now, if you're able to get a Link monster to point to Code Dragon, it can actually protect itself from its own board wipe, which is kinda cool. It's also notable that you don't have to banish your own dark monster with 3000 or more attack, so if you just so happen to line up against an opponent that has one of those, this turns into very strong removal. Just make sure you don't summon Boros with this if you intend to use it long term, since it won't be able to summon itself back from the banishment since it wasn't summoned properly. See, it doesn't even matter if you're a giant gun dragon, learning coding is always a useful skill. Borrel Guard Dragon is a Link 4 monster with 3000 attack, requiring 3 or more effect monsters as material. It can't be destroyed by card effects, and once per turn, you can send a card from your spell and trap zone to the grave to special summon from either grave to your field a monster that was destroyed and sent there this turn, but negate its effects. Once per turn, as a quick effect, you can target a monster on the field and change it to face-up defense position, and your opponent can't activate cards or effects in response to this effect's activation. This is our first example of the Link 4 Borrel cycle, and it's one of the least useful. While all of them have the unrespondable quick effect that triggers your Rokket, its general utility isn't quite as strong, seeing play more of as a gimmick in decks that involve flip monsters. It being a card that turns spells and traps into monster reborns is cool, but it's only situational and you don't even get to use their effects. I kinda see what's going on here. You want to add some defensive capabilities to the theme, but there's something to be said for specialization. Shooting things is what you're really good at, Borrels. If you want to get defensive with guns, shields aren't the way to go about it. You've got to learn how to do it the Bloodborne way. Start training those gun parries. Borrel Dragon is a Link 4 monster with 3000 attack, requiring 3 or more effect monsters as material. Neither player can target this card with monster effects, and once per turn as a quick effect, you can target a face-up monster on the field and it loses 500 attack and defense, an effect that your opponent cannot respond to. At the start of the damage step, if this card attacks an opponent's monster, you can place that opponent's monster in a zone this card points to and take control of it, but send it to the grave during the end phase of the next turn. This is probably the most iconic of the Borrels. It was the first and hit the game with an immediate impact. Easily one of the best monsters you could be making using the Link mechanic. And it's not hard to see why. Monster targeting protection, a way to weaken monsters so even opposing threats up to 3400 couldn't crack it, and it even stole monsters. This monster is the triple threat, and while many new threats have come to take this monster's place in the extra deck, it's hard to deny that it still holds a certain appeal, a barrel dragon worth playing in the modern age. Borrel Sword Dragon is a Link 4 monster with 3000 attack, requiring 3 or more effect monsters as material. It can't be destroyed by battle, and once per turn as a quick effect, you can target an attack position monster and change it to defense position. Also, this card can make a second attack during each battle phase this turn, and your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to this effect's activation. Once per turn, when this card declares an attack on a face-up monster, you can activate this effect, and until the end of the turn, this card gains attack equal to half that monster's current attack. And if it does, that monster's current attack is halved. Whoa, hey there, I was just joking about the Barrel Dragon comparisons, but this just straight up has Metal Morph on it. Better Metal Morph even. This is probably the most derided of all the Borrel monsters. Not because it's bad, because it's almost too good. This card is a recipe for an OTK strapped to a generic monster you can put in just about any deck. The only limitation here is the material amount, but if you can get the necessary bodies on board, this is a double attacking 3000 body that only gets bigger as it attacks. Run into an attack position monster, and it's basically a direct attack when you factor in the attack absorption. And you get to keep that attack boost for the second attack, so yeah, closing out the game is pretty simple with this. Now, as the ability to OTK has been added to monsters with more utility effects, this has gone the way of Borrel Dragon, not finding itself on many lists at this point in the game. But for any deck that wants to leverage its many bodies for an offensive push, this should be your go-to option. Also, the fact that it is a gun dragon with a bunch of swords on it does canonically mean that this card is a fan of Final Fantasy VIII, so thank you, Gunblades. Borrel Dragon is a Link 5 monster with 3500 attack, requiring 3 or more effect monsters as material. It can't be destroyed by battle or card effects, and neither player can target it with monster effects. It can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each, and as a quick effect, you can target an effect monster on the field and a Rokket monster in your grave to negate the effects of that monster on the field, and if you do, special summon that monster from your grave, and your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to this effect's activation. This is currently the pinnacle of Borrel design. It requires the same minimum material requirements, meaning it's not that much more difficult to get a hold of than the other Borrels, and it has an amalgamation of all of the previous one's protection effects, on top of a big multi-attack and quick effect negation, one that cannot be responded to. Not many decks are going to have an answer to that one, though you will need to have Rockets in your graveyard to access the negates. But even without that, this card has the ability to tear apart entire fields with little able to stand in its way, and is a fitting member of the dragons that feature End as part of their title. And you know what they say, endings are the first part of a new beginning. The beginning of whooping your opponent's butt! Bayonet Punisher is a quick play spell card that applies the following effects in sequence depending on the types of Borrel monsters you control and that are in your grave. And if you control a monster with 3000 or more attack, your opponent can't activate cards or effects in response to this card's activation. What a flavorful addition. For Fusion, you banish a monster your opponent controls. For Synchro, you banish 3 random cards from their face down extra deck face up. For Xyz, you banish a spell or trap card your opponent controls. And for Lynx, banish up to 3 cards from your opponent's grave. For the Borrel connoisseurs out there, this is a pretty hefty payoff for having summoned out so many boss monsters. But is it actually worth it? Well, if you at least get Furious Dragon into rotation, it's a non-targeting banish that has the potential to not be responded to, and that by itself seems pretty strong. The other effects, though, are hit and miss, with the Xyz one being the absolute worst, though thankfully X-Charge wasn't really a high priority summon. This is probably more trouble than it's worth, even under optimal conditions, and like, how can you get away with calling it Bayonet Punisher when only one of your dragons has bayonets on it? Seems like a bit of an oversight. Borrel Supplier is a continuous spell card that, during each standby phase, if you control a Borrel Link monster, you can target a Rokket monster in your grave and special summon it, but destroy it during the end phase. This is a pretty neat card to have alongside your Borrels. Each standby phase gifts you with a Rokket for your Borrels to utilize their effects with, and like we talked about earlier, we have a ton of effects that we can utilize with them. And even if you aren't able to fire off those Rocket's gunfire effects, it'll get popped on its own during the end phase, so you'll at least still get the float. So, on top of all the other great qualities this theme has, it also has a very robust supply line. Borrel Regenerator is an equip spell card that activates by targeting a Rokket monster in your grave and special summoning it, equipping it with this card, but banish it when this card leaves the field. If this card is sent to the grave because the equipped monster was destroyed, you can draw a card. So this has a couple of different modes to it. You either revive the Rokket so you can use it as material for a summon, or you can pop it with your Borrels to get that Rocket's gunfire effect, which also nets you a draw, helping to make up for losing that equipped spell over the course of this process. It feels weird that this wasn't translated as Borrel Reload though, considering we're filling up the chambers with Rokket monsters. We could even lean into the whole Varis plays old DM era cards by referencing Reload with this one. Come on folks, get it together! Borrel Cooling is a normal trap card that you activate by tributing a Rokket monster. Then you target a Borrel Link monster that you control. Equip it with this card, and if equipped to a monster by this effect, the equipped monster gains the following effect. As a quick effect, once per turn you can target a monster you control, and it can't be destroyed by a battle or card effect this turn. So since you have to tribute a specific monster and it only works on a particular different monster, what's the purpose of this? Well, the idea is that because the effect is given to the Borrel Link monster, it's not being used by cooling itself. When you use it to protect a card, it can also trigger our Rokket's gunfire effects, giving you a second way to utilize those in a single turn. Though the ironic thing is that when you try to use those Rokket's gunfire effects, they will destroy themselves before the Borrel cooling protection effect kicks in to save them. And outside of that, you just get to keep a monster safe every turn by utilizing this effect. But they must have some really advanced cooling technology in those dragons to keep them chill at that point, because with the double trigger, it feels like things should be overheating instead of cooling off. Execute Protocols is a continuous trap card that can be activated during any battle phase. You can banish a Dark Link monster from your grave, then target a Borrel monster you control, and until the end of the turn, it gains attack equal to the attack of the monster banished to activate this effect. This is the last resort of the Borrels. If you need a big power boost, an even bigger one than the power the monsters already have, you can trade in some of your spent Link monsters to make them even bigger. Now, on the way to make your Borrel Link monsters, you've more than likely deposited a few Dark Links into your graveyard, so you won't have to worry about not having fuel at that point. But if we want to use this to supplement our non-Link Borrel monsters, you'll have to be a bit more mindful. There's also the issue that this isn't a searchable card, nor is it an engine card, so it's hard to justify actually including this. Not to mention it is showing the Borrel monsters at their worst behavior. Hey, come on kids, it's not seafood there. If you're gonna chew your big light energy balls, keep your mouth closed. Alright, so that is all of the Varis cards, but what do we do with them? As a united front, we're going to want to summon out as many materials as possible, link up into our Borrel threats, and use our Rokkets to problem solve for a bit until we can swing in for lethal, and we'll be using all the Dragon and Link support we can get our hands on to accomplish this. So what can we play to help them out? First up, we have Star Liege Seifert. It puts our level 4 Rokkets into our hand, which includes Tracer, which is a great summon from hand off of cards like Boot Sector Launch. And if you don't have to send Seifert itself for that search, it's a great link for Striker Dragon so you can accomplish this. Also, while in the grave, it can recycle level 8 Light or Dark Dragon monsters, and we have a couple that will come up later. While Borrel loads Savage Dragon and Barone are banned, we still have some really strong synchro options in Bestial Dispater and Psyframe Lord Omega. Dispater gives you interaction while recycling your banished monsters, and gives you a way to summon back your banished Lights and Darks. And a real good one is Psyframe Lord Omega. When you use it for its hand loop effect, if you summon it back out with Dispater's effect, it'll strand the banished card in the banishment forever, while giving you the opportunity to do another hand loop. And a great way to summon out Dispater is with the rest of our main deck Bestials. Magnemute can even search you the rest of your dragons, and if you get Bestial Lubellion into rotation, that's branded Regained Access, which is huge and can combine with our level 4 tuners to make Crimson Dragon for some wacky synchro shenanigans. The new enhanced Metal Morph cards are going to be a great boon to the theme, and Dragon decks as a whole. Use enhanced Metal Morph to summon out Red Eye's Black Full Metal Dragon, and now you have an Omni Negate. Now, you have to tribute a level 5 or higher dragon to do this, so your smaller Rockets won't help you here, but Exploder Rocket Dragon is easy to summon with Quick Launch, and all the Bestials can help do the same. And speaking of Red Eyes, Darkness Metal Dragon is a must-play card for how it continues to supply you with dragon monsters, and to get it as soon as possible, you'll want to play Black Metal Dragon. Sending it from the field to the graveyard will net you a Red Eyes card, including Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, along with any number of other Red Eyes support cards. I say, looking at Red Eyes Fusion. Chaos Dragon Levianeer is also a pretty sweet monster to have on hand. Banish a bunch of dark monsters, and this will also help you hand rip alongside Omega. Not to mention that this is one of the monsters we can recycle with Seifert's Grave effect. Destrudo, the Lost Dragon's Frisian, is also a material machine. Sure, it costs you half your life points, but for the cost, you get a free piece of Link material or a gateway into a level 7 Synchro. Ancient Fairy Dragon is a pretty sweet option here, as you're likely to be playing both Boot Sector Launch and Dragon Ravine, so this gives you a way to pivot between the two, not to mention that it can turbo out monsters from your hand. Another version of this is by using Revolution Synchron. We can use it as a tuner from our hand, pairing well with any of our level 4 non-tuners on the field, and it can even come back as a level 1 to upgrade your Ancient Fairy Dragon into a Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, giving you some monster negation. If you've been keeping up for the past few episodes, you'll know we just covered Dragoonity, and there's a big overlap between us and them. We can also make great use of Dragoonity Remus to search for Dragon Ravine, which can set up our grave with a wide variety of dragons, on top of being a great discard outlet. Alternatively, we can just link up into Romulus to accomplish something similar. But if we want a different link too, I'll point you in the direction of Hieratic Seal of the Heavenly Spheres, a great piece of disruption that still grabs you a free dragon. And while many of the Guard Dragon Link monsters have been banned for being super busted, Pisty can still summon out monsters from the grave or banishment. Dragon Rulers are hard to ignore here, especially since we have access to all of them at one now. Use your spent dragons to get out more material onto the field, which is especially helpful for your extra deck monsters that need dragons as material. The same cannot be said for Chaos Ruler, the Chaotic Magical Dragon, my personally headcanoned Light and Dark Dragon Ruler, as the card is currently banned. And banishing the elemental ones will be less impactful since we don't play as many dragons that match their attribute. But free big monsters are still big free monsters. As for a silly tech pick, Chamber Dragon Maid is at the top of my list. This requires us to be on a version of the deck that runs a lot of big dragons, so the Dragon Rulers, but you can use its on summon effect to grab you Dragon Maid Changeover, which you can then activate, fusing Chamber and any level 5 or higher dragon you have in rotation to make Dragon Maid show for an Omni Negate that turns into House Dragon Maid for a pretty good sized body. Alternatively, because Changeover can be used for any Dragon Fusion summon, and Chamber Dragon Maid is a dark dragon, it's another way to make Borrel'd Furious Dragon, so it's got some solid utility. And that's all I have to say about the Borrel Monsters and Varis' cards as a whole. It's wild how every other card was a milestone in card design. Revolver really did change the game with what dragons were capable of, which is a high bar to clear as they were already one of the game's most supported and respected monster types. And it's only going to get better from here. Cool dragons are a part of Yu-Gi-Oh's DNA, and we're always just a little while away from the next thing that will revolutionize those most mythic of creatures. It just turns out that this time, the fantasy elements have been replaced with guns. I mean, forget all the previous barrel dragon jokes, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has never been closer to aping Digimon's designs. But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Are Rockets and Borrels firing on all cylinders, or do we need to check our equipment one more time? And which one's your favorite? I think Furious Dragon probably has the best composition out of all of them, and it has nothing to do with the fact that it's a pretty good tech pick in Branded. Let me know your favorites down below, and if you haven't already, please be sure to like the video if you liked it, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and share this video with somebody you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode is brought to you by my lovely patrons, as well as the wonderful people over at Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and save 5% on your order by using the coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. And speaking of those lovely patrons, I'd like to give them a thanks right now. This month's Quasar Commander is Upstairs Media, Nebula Navigators are 3rd Dynasty, 50 Gigabits, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Owexatowe Hime, Anansi Dragon, Ancient Wizard, Andrew Newman, Kane Senpai, Chibi Gohan, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Comrade Copperbottom, Emony Chan, Eric, Frankie, Garland Chaos, Green Knight, Gloomba 331, Great Big Pillock, Groog, Hairbear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Howling Zangetsu, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Carp, Leo 458, Mana Charge, Marion James E. Picata, Megacombi, Millennia Asta, Mern, Nathan Vig, Natiel Lee Alexander, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, Red Eyes Jackalow, RJ the Jank Monarch, Sammy Haim, Serenity Towns, Skybuster Leo, The Critic of Innocence, Thievery Coast and the Wizard Moose, Cosmic Crusaders Ariel Kersey, Baron von Titty Sprinkles, Beelzephyr, Beluga Masta, Blitzwolf, Borger with a Shotgun, Chaz Ghost, Childish Lamar, Dr. Reaper RIP, Drachenwald, Eki Bullock, Eva Padilla, Hike Boyagian, Herbal D, Ignis Heath the True Draco Slayer, Inblink, Kale the Dragon, Kevon Public, Lobomaru02, Manga Pages, Marluxia's a Girl, Matt Simmons, McSpoofy, Michael Shimabukuro, Night Trummo, Nyx, Obsidian, Shizuka Nijimura, Sophie, apparently, Stephen Williamson, Taylor Seymour, The Legendary Raven, The Phantom Knights of Shitted Pants, The Pokemon 52, Tiger X2476, Visor KG, Zeldreka and Zalus, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you liked what you saw and want to help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, be a part of these credits and other awesome perks, it would mean the world to me if you would check out the links to my Patreon in the description or consider joining as a YouTube member. And if you'd like to see more dragon shenanigans, check out this video where I cover the Dragon Rulers. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. It wasn't just the Rockets that walked in front of my screen. Once again, Moby, thank you very much for this. Always a pleasure to have you as part of the casting crew. Your color commentary is a boon to all of this, and I wouldn't be able to do it without you. Thank you again so much. I have no clue why you do this, but here you are. Altergeist! You said it, Moby. You can't just capitalize the X in the middle of the name and make the monster suck. It's not fair. Kingdom Hearts ass looking monster.